Hello, my friends. I'm Flora speaking out again, and thank you so much for joining me. I'm thinking back to when my family bought their first home camera, movie camera. I think it must have been somewhere in the early 1930s, and what fun we had with it. My parents filmed everything. But the most fun of all, of course, was when the family and friends would gather to view it. And what a to do that was. Setting up the chairs, um, setting up the bulky screen. You had to unroll it. And if you didn't have a screen, they were expensive to hang up a sheet, ironed hopefully, and to show the pictures of what the family had been up to this past month. And what we children loved the most of all was when whoever was in charge of the complicated projector, the film often tangling itself. Anyway, what the fun thing was to run it backwards. We would go into just shouts of laughter when we'd see someone whose hat fell off, see the hat leaping up from the ground back on the head, or see someone bicycling backwards or a baby crawling backwards. It was such fun. Uh, Going backwards can be very amusing and exciting, like, the amusement park rides, for example. Going backwards can be beautiful, like the Olympic ice skaters or the reverse waltz, those old dances, or for that matter, surfers, those who swim out to the wave and then are carried back with power and thrill to the shore again. And going backwards can be very poignant, like visiting an old home, your hometown, or maybe your old house your family lived in. I remember some years ago, my sister and her husband arranged a meeting with the owners of a house our family had lived in for almost half a century. And one by one, the relatives kind of attached themselves to this visit. And when the present homeowners opened the door and started back, it wasn't just a couple standing there, was about 10 of us, like Charlie Brown's gang standing on the doorstep there. Well, they let us in, and we went from room to room with memories. And the owners followed us with their video camera as we recorded the memories of each room. That's the night where you fell down the stairs, remember, John? Or that's where the wedding reception was held and the lawnmower next door was roaring at us. That's when you spilled a whole jar of olive oil in the kitchen, remember? That kind of thing. It was lovely, poignant, delightful. And going back in memories can be very healing, revisiting old wounds, pain, with a new understanding and a healing, sometimes needing therapy to help us go back to those old memories for our healing. But as we all know, going back can be tragic, destructive, ruinous, and rot. Individually, we can make prisons for ourselves when we live in the old times and refuse to keep learning and growing. Even more destructive, if a community deliberately turns back the clock on what has been so long and painfully and sacrificially learned through time. For example, a church, or any community of brother or sisterhood for that matter, that had begun already tearing down walls, moving from stances of judgment and condemnation towards compassion, fellowship, Then all of a sudden, about face, building the walls of separation and exclusion all over again. That's tragic. And of course, a government conceived in a dream of human equality, dignity, freedom, a dream based on the concept of decent leaders of honor and integrity, a dream of the balance of powers, so no one part of the government could outshout the other, turning its face backward, a kind of human devolvement from the human back into the ape. And this is happening right now in our lifetime. A hideous reversal of all that we had learned in this past century. Back to the ugly 1930s of my childhood. There was nothing great or glorious about them. It was a time, well, let me put it this way. Back from realizing the dream that had been building for centuries of one world, internationalism, to rampant, arrogant nationalism, my country, right or wrong, which is immoral. Back from ecological awareness, concern for the cleanliness, and great strides taken towards the cleanliness of lakes, rivers, soil, sky. Back to the filthy fossil fuels. I remember the air over the big cities and the filth of the lakes and the rivers. Back to that. Back from the long agonizing struggle of human rights, making it easier for people to vote. Back to when it was made so hard for people to vote. Back to the federal indifference to poverty, sickness, disability, unemployment. Back from, they seemed miraculous vaccines. Back to the crippling, killing diseases. Back from academic freedom, where teachers could teach with integrity based on evidence. Back to government interference. You've got to stick to the line. Back to the days of scorning the immigrants. Back, and this is one of the worst, to the admiration of the strong men, the dictators. And in the 1930s, that was the decade where the most devastating dictators, strong men of all time, rose. And believe me, there were plenty in America who admired them, wanted to imitate them. All right, it isn't any excuse for us, our government that is. It isn't as if we were a nation that had never known democracy, a nation that had had centuries of dictators, emperors. We didn't understand what freedom smells like. We did understand. We did know what it was like. We had worked many of these problems through to a marvelous breakthrough in just recent decades. We knew better, and there's no forgiveness for that. Turning back the clock to the brutal days. Now this sounds pretty hopeless. I'm sorry, I know it sounds that way, but at the same time, strangely enough, I'm feeling a tremendous hope that maybe we needed a jolt to get us out of our complacency, our smugness, our taking things for granted. Maybe now, for the first time since 9/11, we are beginning in this pain we're in to define what it is to be an American, what is and was the dream of human equality and dignity. We are defining it now. We're standing up for it, often at the worst point, the nadir. A door opens and we stand up and face the light and act again and speak again in that light. I was trying to think of an example of forging ahead, moving against the times, moving against, well, the Trump agenda and its brutal, ugly turning back. And of course, I thought of all sorts of things, like the 100 years it took to move against slavery. The world had never known what it was to be without slavery. Or the decades and decades to get women the vote, for example. I thought of all those historical examples, and then something jumped into mind, which may amuse you, but it also will illustrate what we're thinking about right now. I used to live near I don't know what you call it, salmon fishery. Anyway, it was a place where you could go and observe the salmon swimming upstream to spawn. I looked it up. Those salmon, it was incredible. They could go swimming 3,000 miles. They could leap over obstacles as high as 6 feet on their drive for new life, going against the tide, going against the stream, forging ahead. It's amazing their power, their purpose, I might say their passion for bringing new life. But you know, oddly enough, beautifully enough, it was also a return, a going back in the best sense of the word. They go back to the rivers where they were spawned to bring new life to the, you might say, the original salmon dream. Just like we, standing up, declaring again who we are, we go back hopefully fulfilling that dream of the founders' dream. So it's a forging ahead and a returning back to that powerful God-given dream. Thank you for sharing these thoughts with me. We forge ahead, don't we? See you next time.